You know, so we were talking about God being a body, and indeed, very likely something like a human body. Well, let me say a little bit more about that. The LDS have a very distinctive, we call theological anthropology, that teaches that all of us, as I was saying, are the embodiment of a soul that pre-existed our birth. That soul or spirit child is an offspring of Heavenly Father and Mother. So I'll say again that Heavenly Father for LDS is actually literally our Father. Although in this way that I don't think there's much speculation on how exactly Heavenly Father and Mother populate or copulate. I can't believe I just said that. But that there is a process involved, and my guess is there would be an assumption that it's somehow a sexual process, and it might not be all that different from our mode of procreation as humans, along with other mammals. But we'll leave that for LDS to speculate about. I'm sure they do say it would be a matter of speculation. Now, the interesting thing is that then he goes on, does Peck, to talk about 5 theological responses to evolutionary theory that you can find, sort of religious responses. These are from Niels Gregersen, a professor of theology, Danish professor, like yours truly, except he's at the University of Copenhagen, so he's really more Danish. Interestingly enough, under flat religious naturalism, and you can read what Peck writes to get a sense for what that means, but we could say that down at the bottom of 51, Peck says, well, at first glance it seems unlikely that Mormonism could be associated with flat religious naturalism. The fact is, there is a kind of mystery about fundamental questions for Mormonism that focus on, now I'm quoting, God's nature, God's attributes, and powers. For example, in this view, the laws that frame and structure the matter from which all things, including God, because God is a body, are constituted, are laws that are not created by God, but are self-existent along with God. So now I'm at the top of 52. Matter, intelligence, and the laws that govern their interaction would be self-existent, that is, dependent on nothing but themselves for existence, and uncreated, which means not created, with some resulting confusion in the way that Mormons talk about God. So this is a very important point. Oh, my. I would just again encourage you to read the rest of that on 52. There is a quotation from the Doctrine and Covenants. Remember, this is literature purported to be, alleged to be revelation to Joseph Smith. I emphasize that. I don't believe it's revelation. Otherwise, I'd be an LDS person. But in the Doctrine and Covenants, we read, there is no such thing as immaterial matter. No such thing as matter that is immaterial. That's almost self-evident. If it was immaterial, it wouldn't be matter. But actually what follows up makes this point even more strong. All spirit is matter. So there's no denial that spirit exists, but spirit itself is some kind of matter. So there's no immateriality whatsoever. All spirit is matter, but it's matter that is more fine or pure and can only be discerned by purer eyes. We cannot see it, but when our bodies are purified, we shall see that it is all matter. Matter, again, of varying degrees of, we might say, purity or fineness. And thus, he says, matter, Peck follows up, matter could be broadly construed or conceived to include God. And yes, that's exactly right. God, spirits, and intelligence is part of the finer or purer matter thought to make up the extended universe. Now, in that paragraph, notice, or in that sentence, God, comma, spirits, comma, and intelligence. So that's the next point I want to talk about. As far as an LDS theological anthropology is concerned, there's God, and there's Heavenly Mother, God the Father, and I guess you'd say God the Mother, or at least Heavenly Mother. They produce, in our world, spirit children, and the clear assumption is that this process happens elsewhere, that our Heavenly Father is far from the only, in fact, there are gods many, Joseph Smith said. Gods many, and matter eternal. And so, although LDS, see, I would want to speculate about these things because I've sort of got that philosophical bent. But a lot of LDS aren't that interested in wondering about these other gods, if pressed, and especially with my LDS friends who are religion professors, they'll certainly say, yeah, those are things that we've thought about and so on. So the spirit children that we are on planet Earth with our Heavenly Father and Mother is presumably a scenario that's repeated or replicated, you just want to say like throughout the universe. So for LDS, speculation about life on other planets is not at all ruled out, with this rather significant difference, that life on other planets would be generally assumed to be very much like the life on this planet. I almost want to say like pretty much identical to. But I suppose, on the other hand, given that the doctrine of creation is that the gods organize the matter, and I asked, well, which gods here? And I said, isn't it typical to think that because they have in the Pearl of Great Price that the gods organize the matter for this world? I know I'm throwing a lot out to you. And I said, is that usually like the Father and the Son? Are those the gods? And JB is the one that volunteered to me, well, more and more we're saying also Heavenly Mother. So that these are the gods. And then he said, and maybe even Adam, which I didn't even try to go down that path. But they take matter and organize it. So I suppose if you say, they organize pre-existing matter, and then if you have an evolutionary assumption, you could end up with creatures not at all like human beings, if the way that those other worlds are organized in matter, the laws are the same, though. They're these self-existent eternal laws. Anyhow, life on other worlds is almost a given for LDS folks. Now, notice, though, that he says God, spirits, and again, that's what you are and what you were prior to coming to Earth and being given birth in a body. I don't believe these things. This is an interesting kind of body-soul dualism that includes pre-existence. We'll have to talk about this more in class, and we will. But notice he also then uses the word intelligence, and this is where it gets really fascinating. Well, it's all fascinating, but JB mentioned this briefly in class on Thursday, so I want to go back and pick up on it. Even prior to our, we'll say, being conceived in the pre-mortal realm or heaven as spirit children, we existed in another kind of form. Much less, it's like, right now, it's clear that we're it's separate individuals. I'm Michael Lodahl, and you all, or whoever you are listening. In the pre-existence, that's also the case. I don't know if I was Michael Lodahl. That seems like that's associated with my being born, with Danish heritage and so on. Maybe I had some choice in that in the pre-existent world. LDS are not entirely sure. I don't think about that. In any case, I still had individuality of some kind in that pre-existence after being birthed by Heavenly Mother. But there is that which pre-existed my spirit child existence. And those are called intelligences. And intelligences are the real, pure, eternal core of who you are, like pre-existing even your spirit child existence. If this is starting to get mind-blowing and confusing, what can I say? Hang on tight. So as an intelligence, you are an eternal intelligence. And here, my guess would be that eternal intelligences don't vary too much. Although I think Peck even talks about this a little bit, that there may be some variation among eternal intelligences. But what they are essentially is intelligent. That is, we could say rational, knowing, self-aware in some way. They're not humans. They're not even pre-mortal spirits. They're intelligences. And that's just kind of left that way. Now the question becomes, if intelligences are eternal, are they infinite in number? And I think the general answer would probably be something like yes, although there may be some possibility that all intelligences somehow are derived from one primal, original intelligence with a capital I. Not sure. I don't think LDS are sure either. But the thing I want you to see here is that what Peck's saying is that even intelligence or intelligences would also be a form of matter of some kind, materiality of some kind. Very interesting idea. I can't really take it beyond that, certainly not here and not in the time that given to me. I'm going to stop this one. I'll come back and do hopefully just one more session on this.